Auburn's schedule is locked and loaded for next season, but who are their easiest and toughest opponents? My guy Thrift Baringer joins the show to talk about it. Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every week is my good friend, Thrift Baringer, a co-host and owner over at Georgia, Alabama Sports Live. And you can catch him also on 92.1, that's Sports Visions Radio daily. I think you guys are on from what, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern?
Man, morning show every weekday. Me and DJ giving the hottest take, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And yeah, Mike, Georgia, Alabama Sports Live. Good to be back, ready for some hot takes on those Auburn Tigers.
Oh, man. Well, today we're talking Auburn's schedule. What are their toughest and easiest SEC games this year on this schedule? Now, you and I both know there's no such thing as a cakewalk schedule in the SEC, but there is such thing as a favorable schedule, Thrift. And Auburn has probably the most favorable schedule that we've seen for the Tigers in quite some time. I would say it's probably the most favorable schedule we've seen in the last 20 years.
Yep.
Take a look at the schedule, and Thrift and I are going to walk you through what we're thinking. Hit the comments after the video. Let us know who you think Auburn's easiest and toughest SEC opponents are of the 2025 schedule. Look, we're talking SEC schedule here, but they do get the year kicked off against Baylor. Now, this game has been moved to August the 29th. That's a Friday. Then you have Ball State and South Alabama before you hit SEC play. I want to mention those non-conference games because this is how you're set up to roll into SEC play. A lot of people feel like Auburn should be 3-0 headed into Oklahoma, where they will go to Norman for the first time, I think, in the history of college football. Last year, Oklahoma came to the Plains for the first time in the history of college football. This should be a doozy look. And then you have Texas A&M on the road, and then you come home for Georgia. So 2 straight road SEC games to start the 2025 conference schedule. Then you come home for to play a Georgia team that Auburn has not in a really, really long time. Then you got Missouri, which I think, again, this is a game. Oh, man, I have my thoughts about Missouri. You go on the road to Arkansas. You come home for Kentucky on the road at Vandy. Not exactly an intimidating place to play. And then you come home for the last 2 games, Mercer non-conference, but Alabama, the Iron Bowl on the Plains. Let's get back to it here. Thrift, let's start with the easiest game on the schedule. Let's crap on somebody. Who is the easiest conference game that Auburn will face this year?
Honestly, I know a lot of people are thinking, is it Vanderbilt? Because you just perennially think Vanderbilt, I mean, obviously has always been the kind of the lower tier team in the SEC, kind of the punching bag. But in my opinion, for this next upcoming season, it's got to be Kentucky. For one, they're 4-8 off of last year. They were so bad that Brock Vandagriff, who came from Georgia, retired. And that's how bad they were. And now a guy that has been in college football since 2019, this is going to be year 7, Zach Calzada, who was also an Auburn product, is a starting quarterback there. Yeah, I'm not very high on Mark Stoops' team, even though I am a big fan of Mark Stoops. I thought last year they were going to have a year in which they won 9 or 10 games. Remember, for a good period from 2018 to about 2023, Kentucky was a perennial 7-8 win team, even better than Auburn's been during that stretch. But last year, you saw what happened, and then the transfer portal did them no good. They lost a lot of key pieces. That game being at home, that game being Military Appreciation Night, so I expect a packed-out house. I would say that would have to be the easiest game, in my opinion, and one that I am for sure putting down as a win. And if Auburn does lose and disappoint me, I'll come back on here and rant and rave for everyone to be able to see.
Look, that's not a bad pick. If for reference, last year, with your guy Brock Vandagriff at quarterback, Auburn ran all over Kentucky. Now, they won this game by 2 touchdowns. But if you're Jarquez Hunter had 78 yards on 23 carries versus Kentucky, will Damari Alston run all over them as well, too? I like chances. So this is not a bad pick for easiest game in the SEC this year. Look, when you're looking at that schedule too, it's at home. It's a home game, so they went on a road and ran all over them. And so again, certainly, I want to acknowledge we understand there's no such thing as a cakewalk schedule. This is not meant to be a disrespect to Kentucky, but somebody's got to be homecoming, right? Somebody has to be homecoming. And, we saw a number of SEC teams over the last couple of years pick Auburn as homecoming. A lot of fans felt very disrespected by that.
As they should.
So it's going to be interesting to see where they land up here. I think for my easiest game of the schedule, I have to go Thrift. I have to go with Missouri. Missouri.
You got something against Missouri, Mike. I mean, you've been a Missouri, I won't say hater, but you have. They've had a tough time getting your respect. They've had a tough time getting Mike G's respect.
Yeah, look, Missouri has a lot to account for this season. And I will tell you this, I've said it repeatedly on this show as it pertains to Auburn Thrift. It is not easy to go out and find game-breaking quarterbacks. They had their guy in Brady Cook. And look, man, he played well for them last year. Him and Luther Burton were one of the more formidable QB wide receiver combos in the country the last couple of years. So, I think it's naive to think that you can just lose that and then replace it like it's nothing. I have them pegged for a significant fall off in 2025. I think Auburn rolls all over Missouri, quite frankly. Last year, Brady Cook resurrected from the dead to beat Auburn. I mean, it was he went to the hospital. He literally went to the hospital and came back and beat Auburn. So, what are we to believe about Missouri this year? I think that I have questions about quarterback. I have so many questions at quarterback. When you look at that game that they played last year, if he had not returned, they were going to lose that game, Thrift.
Yep.
I don't even think it was a question. They were 100% lose that game. So Missouri, the SEC is tough, man. It's tough, and I think it only gets tougher for Missouri. Drew Pine was the backup. If he projects to be the starter, I got no faith in Missouri this year. Zero. I think Auburn, by the start, is much more talented than Missouri coming into this season. And this is where you have to, although Eli Drinkwitz has done a good job developing talent there, underrated talent there, this is where recruiting wins, man. Right. Hugh Freeze is going out and he's gotten dogs. And if you're going to put our dogs versus their dogs now in year 3, I'm picking Auburn every time. As long as Jackson Arnold is average, Auburn rolls Missouri this year. And that's how I feel about it.
No, I completely agree with you, man. And Drew Pine, the backup last year, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Listen, Missouri won 11 games in 2023, won the Cotton Bowl, beat Ohio State, and finished in the top 10. And then last year finished in the top 25 and finished 10-3 on the season, including a Music City Bowl win over Iowa. Brady Cook had a phenomenal career at Missouri. I would put him up there as like a Chase Daniel type impact on Missouri, especially maybe even a little bit better because Missouri's doing this in the SEC. And to be honest with you, I think they're more a tougher conference than what Chase Daniels had to do. The quarterback of Missouri back in 2007, 2008, made a Heisman Trophy, was in the Heisman Trophy presentation, didn't actually win it. But with that being said, they replace a lot. Obviously, this is not a place that is known for getting 5 stars. They probably got some decent transfers, but not enough, as you made mention, to match the roster of Auburn. Then it being at home, there are no excuses. I think Missouri and Kentucky have to be must wins. And to be frank with you, they need to be dominant wins. If we think this team's an 8 or 9 win team, Mike, you have to start dominating teams you're better than and your roster's better than, and they have better rosters than both of them.
Yeah, top to bottom, Auburn has a better roster than Missouri. I argue with the wall here, Missouri fans. I don't care. I think Auburn has underperformed the talent they've had the first couple of years, but in year 3, this is exactly what Hugh Freeze had planned. Year 1 and 2 may not have gone the way that he planned in terms of wins and losses, but in terms of the composition of talent, Auburn is exactly where Hugh Freeze wanted them to be in year 3. And that should be a scary thing for people, because I'm telling you, bringing in top 7 classes, is hard to do. And Hugh Freeze said it. He said, if we're not in the top 6 or 7 in recruiting by year 3, everybody here is going to be looking for a job. Thrift, he believed that so much, he went out and did it in year 2.
Right.
So this man wants his job. I think he understands that you're not going to out-develop the top teams in this conference. And that's where teams like Missouri fall short. You need dogs. My guy Josh Pate always says that. He says, you're not going to out-develop Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, and these guys who are bringing in 5 stars every single recruiting cycle. Right. You have to recruit your own set of 5 stars, and then you still have to be better than them on game day, at calling plays and getting your team in the right position. So I don't think Missouri's there, man. I think they've fallen so far behind in the talent. I think Auburn wins that game by 3 touchdowns.
As they should. Now. And I agree with you to a certain extent, because it is hard to recruit at Missouri. I don't want to take anything away from Eli. I think X's and O's and the way he schemed and the fact that he got 21 wins in the last 2 years, he's a pretty daggum good coach. But to do it, what you're talking about, what Josh is talking about, is sustaining success year in and year out. It is very tough to do, especially when you're competing with the likes of Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and all the other great teams that we have in the SEC conference.
Yeah. It's going to come down to who's the better game day coach for sure. But like I said, as far as talent is concerned, Auburn has lapped Kentucky and Missouri. So look, Kentucky, Missouri, you are the weakest link, but who are the strongest links in the chain? We'll talk about that right after our quick words from our friends at the Vibe Vault. If you're in the Columbus, Phoenix City area, you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, visit our friends at the Vibe Vault, not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite I in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right on the Highway 431 across the street from Chattahoochee Valley Community College, next to the Renfro Supermarket and the Marco's Pizza. The Vibe Vault, helping keep you fresh this weekend. Also, our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code REPORTER, get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever has you ailed in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Visit them. Look, Thrift, your boss getting on your nerves, don't slap them. Go to the Rogue Shop. Girlfriend getting on your nerves, dump her, and visit the Rogue Shop, rogueshop.com, helping you solve everything that's bothering you today. And our friends at Golden's Cast Iron, visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights, and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Golden's Cast Iron, workout, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. Let's jump back in here, Thrift. Who are the toughest games on the schedule? I'm going to pull it back up here. In the SEC, I went back and forth about this, because I think that the top of the conference, there's been a power shift at the top of the conference.
Yep.
For so long, it would have been very, very easy to pick Georgia or Alabama as the toughest game on the schedule. And I'm not so sure that's true this year. You have your thoughts about it. Who's your toughest game on the schedule for 2025?
I'm going to go and do a hot take. And honestly, I'm not doing this to be contrarian. I'm not doing this to just go viral, be clipped, to get the agitators going. I'm genuinely believe this is our toughest game, and that is Oklahoma. Why you ask that? Well, for one, it is on the road. It is the first road game of the SEC. As you talked about in the beginning of this segment, it's the first time ever Auburn's gone to Norman, Oklahoma to play the Sooners. Then they got a quarterback and John Mateer, fear the Mateer, as you just said, like you say, fear the deer in Milwaukee for the Bucks. We got fear the Mateer for the Oklahoma Sooners. 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions last year for Washington State. Obviously, Washington State, one of the more improved teams, even though they play in that 2-team conference. He still had a great year. Now he's coming in. They got a new offensive coordinator, and Brent Venables thinks that this is his best roster since taking over for Lincoln Riley in the Oklahoma job 4 years ago. This is year number 4 for him. With that being said, I look at the roster. I look at the fact that Oklahoma is probably going to be undefeated in the top 15. I look at the fact that Mateer is a really experienced and developed quarterback that can come in, I think, and take over this offense. I think this could present problems for Auburn. And if you're Auburn and you're not undefeated, let's say you already have one loss, now that makes this game even more important because you don't want to get behind the 8 ball because you're still trying to compete to make it in that coveted college football playoff. So I think this being the first road game, the biggest test of the season so far, because if you can win at Oklahoma, that A&M game looks winnable, the Georgia game looks more attainable, and the Alabama at the very end, you think, hey, there's a real chance we could win the SEC or win 10 games this year. So I got the hardest game being Oklahoma just because of it being a new venture, never been, no Auburn team has ever gone there before, and the fact there's a lot of unknown because Mateer didn't play in the SEC last year. Yeah, there's film on him, but we don't really know much about him. So I'm going Oklahoma. What about you, Mike G?
I like that pick, and I like that pick because I'm not sure. I think Oklahoma is when we find out whether this team truly has an offensive identity or not, Thrift. And I have zero questions about what DJ Durkin is going to do on defense. I have tons of questions about what this is going to look like offensively. In my exclusive one-on-one sit-down with Hugh Freeze, we talked about the prospect of Auburn running more 10 personnel this year because of the talent shift from tight end to wide receiver. And Hugh Freeze says, I haven't really done it my first 2 years, but you're definitely going to see it this year. He hasn't been willing to commit to that in previous years. And I just wonder how that's going to look. But certainly I think Oklahoma has enough talent to test your mettle, and you're going to find out who you are in that game. So, I like that pick because it's not just about how good is Oklahoma. It's about where that game falls on the schedule and where Auburn may be in their process in terms of figuring out who they are.
Before you move on, I got to add one more thing. I think that's probably one of the more important factors is the fact that that's Jackson Arnold's first time returning to Oklahoma since being the starting quarterback there. And if you don't think that he's going to have some type of extra motivation, is he going to play out of his comfort zone? Is he going to allow them to get him riled up? Because Oklahoma fans and really all college football fans in general are known to do that, Mike. That's another big factor because him going back in that atmosphere and he does not play up the standard. And who knows him better than Brent Venables and that defense? Yeah, that's another reason that I think that's probably one of the more tougher games next year.
Yeah, definitely. The revenge game for Jackson Arnold potentially definitely adds a layer of complexity to that game that Hugh Freeze will have to manage. My toughest game of the season, Thrift, looking at this schedule again, I think the toughest games are all in the first half of the season, in the first 6. I think this season will be defined by how Auburn handles this first 6-game stretch, starting at Baylor and ending at Georgia. And, to nobody's surprise, I'm picking Georgia. Look, Auburn has gotten their ass whooped in this series of the last few years. As a matter of fact, I think the last time the Tigers beat Georgia was 2017. And look, and they won big. And had they been
40-17.
Yeah, right. Had they been able to pull off the win in the SEC championship game, the second go round, they're in the college football playoff that year. But they weren't able to get it done. Gus did what Gus does in that game. He ran Kerryon Johnson into the ground, and it's been a really long time since Auburn has been able to claim a win over Georgia. And they played them tough. Now, they played them tough in some of these games. So they haven't just been getting run off the field every year, but certainly it's 2.5 quarters of it hanging in there before the talent gap shows up. And this is the year where we find out truly how much has the talent gap closed between Auburn and the truly elite in college football, because make no mistake, they may have questions on offense with Carson Beck going to Miami and all the shifts that they've had happening. And I think we found out in the playoff that Georgia fans should really appreciate what Stetson Bennett was able to do as quarterback there.
100%.
I know he was a 5-star coming out of high school, but certainly he delivered championships to Athens. And Thrift, I'm telling you, this game is going to mean so much for Auburn. If you can win your toughest game, which is Georgia, the rest of the season projects really, really well for Hugh Freeze in year 3. there's a psychological aspect to this game as well, too, that I think that makes this a really, really tough game for Auburn. Do these guys believe that they can beat Georgia? If you're Hugh Freeze, can you get your team to believe that they can win this game coming in? Because history has shown it's not been close. So
yeah,
you got this game at home, and I know there's some road games here or there, but like I think that even at home, this is the toughest game on the schedule.
and listen, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I also wanted to try to have a different answer than you, but I will say the fact that it's on the road in Oklahoma and Georgia being at home, I would lean towards, again, that makes it a little bit tougher for that at Oklahoma. But on the flip side, if I'm being devil's advocate, Mike, that mental block that you're talking about with the University of Georgia, even worse than it is with the University of Alabama, that is something that you can not take for granted. And Auburn fans know this wholeheartedly, because even with that 2017 win, you won in 2013 and 2010. Those are the only times you have won since 2004. So in the last 20 years, you have won 4 times against the University of Georgia. That's pretty bad, and that's a big mental block that it is like, I don't think we're ever going to beat these guys. So I am with you on that, and it's also a test to see where our roster is compared to teams that can win national championships. But you got to think, do you believe in the quarterback at Georgia? Do you think that this Georgia team that is year in and year out with attrition and guys going to the NFL, are they going to have another roster that is comparable to the ones that have dominated Auburn in the last couple of years and won national championships in the last 4 or 5 years? That one is still to be debatable, but yes, it still is Georgia. The mental block, I agree with everything you're saying. I can see why you would think Georgia's the toughest game on the schedule.
Yeah, Gunnar Stockton probably projects to be their starting quarterback. I'm not claiming to keep up with things, everything Georgia, but certainly, we saw a little bit of him in the playoff game. And look, man, finding gangbuster QBs is hard, man.
100%.
I'm telling you, it's hard. It's why Hugh Freeze is they've taken the approach to constructing this roster that they have, Thrift. It's, you know what? While I'm waiting on my generational QB, I'm going to stack the deck everywhere else. So Hugh Freeze is done. I'm going to go out, I'm going to get Cam Coleman. I'm going to get Perry Thompson. I'm going to get the best O-line I can get. I'm going to stack the deck around the quarterback, so I don't need my quarterback to be Superman to win football games. Yep. When it happens, it's great. And every once in a while, you get a rare combination of a stacked deck around a generational talent, and that's when Heismans are won. Right. So and as proof, I give you Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, right? Like these guys who, think about how good Joe Burrow is, but think about who he was throwing to, and people would say, well, yeah, I can win Heisman throwing to those guys. No, but like they broke records because both ends of that were phenomenal. I think Auburn has the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson end of it type of talent at wide receiver. And we'll see where they're at quarterback, but certainly they have closed the talent gap quite a bit on the Georgias and the Alabamas. Look, Nick Saban is gone. He's not coming back. And without him, I think there is room for somebody to move into that premier spot. And why not Auburn? If you're going to be able to continue to recruit this way, and it's truly going to come down to, can I out game plan the guy on the other side of the field, Hugh Freeze is going to have a chance to win a lot of football games. So if you get over that, if they get over the mental hump that is Georgia this year, watch out for the Tigers moving forward.
I completely agree with you, but I do want to add one thing. You brought up Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow. I just want to throw this out there. This is kind of off topic in terms of Auburn's roster this year, but what Cam Newton did in 2010, again, you just made mention about Jaden and Joe Burrow. Anybody that want to argue with me on who had the better college football single season, I don't care how many touchdown passes Joe Burrow threw to. Those two guys are the best receivers in the NFL. You name me one other player than Nick Fairley that was on that Auburn roster that Auburn won a national championship for. I'm never hearing it again, and it is point proven. It's the greatest single season we've ever seen. At least Auburn can still hold their head on that, but that was 15 years ago, Mike. So we got to have another one of those here in the near future.
15 years ago. Wow. You just dated us both. I feel old. Look, I was a whole adult with a whole salary job when Cam Newton went on that run, and I can't believe how long ago that was.
I was a senior in high school. It made my senior year so special. Auburn winning a national title.
Oh my goodness! I remember where I was at when they won that national title. Hopefully, Hugh Freeze can deliver another one to the Plains with the influx of talent that he has coming in. But hey, either way, we're going to be here to talk about it on the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I want to thank Thrift Baringer for joining me. Thrift, before we get out of here, as always, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, you can tune in to Georgia, Alabama Sports Live. We got a lot of high school baseball playoffs that are going on right now. And, of course, we cover all things East Alabama, West Central Georgia, and the entire state. Obviously, things local in the Southeast. And then plus the Sports Vision Morning Show, which we're the only live and local radio, sports talk radio show from Auburn, Opelika, Noonan, LaGrange, anywhere in that vicinity. We're the only one, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., Sports Vision, 92.1 FM. Always a pleasure, my brother, Mike G.
Guys, thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day. That's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. Do me a favor, if you guys are in comments after the video and you want to show us some love, smash that super button. We appreciate all of our listeners for continuing to support the work that we're doing here. Also, hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.